As the summer unfolds, Dunedin's temperatures are slowly rising and residents are spending more time outdoors. Otago-Southland Cancer Society Chief Executive Mike Kernaghan joins us to talk about sun safety. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening.
How can residents prevent themselves from harmful damage from the sun? It is quite hot in this part of the world.
Yeah, and heat's got little to do with it, which is one of the misconceptions we have around the risk of sun. So really it's just the normal things, covering up at the appropriate times, wearing a bit of sunscreen, putting on a wide floppy hat or a wide brimmed hat.
What are the consequences of overexposure?
Well, clearly sunburn, and we might talk about that in a minute, just what the consequences of that are further down the track. The skin ages much more quickly if you've been overexposed to sun, and obviously there's an increased risk of skin cancer.
Are there guidelines for how much time in the sun is safe?
Yes, there are, and it's all to do with the UV index. So the UV index starts to rise in September, peaks in January, and is back down to quite low levels by the beginning of April. So in this period which we're in now, the UV index can get quite high, and whether it's warm, cold or whatever it is, if the UV index is high, then we are very much at risk of getting sunburn.
What are the key messages that the Society is promoting this summer?
Well, we've already talked about it. It's the old slip, slap, slop and wrap, and so I've talked about the clothing, I've talked about the wide brimmed hat, using sunscreen, put on some sunglasses, and if we do that typically between 10 and 4 during the summer, round about January when they're really high, you might want to extend that a little bit later, 4:30 maybe, but typically between 10 and 4, if we're looking after ourselves and covering up appropriately, then we should be okay.
Do we have lower rates of skin cancer down here?
No,
Some
we
people
don't.
would think we would because it's colder.
Exactly, and that's again one of the misconceptions. No, it is all about the UV index. We, in 2013, which were the last statistics that have been published around all the different cancer types, and in this case melanoma, which is the most serious of the skin cancers. There are 181 new diagnoses of melanoma in the southern DHB area out of 2,400. That's about 8% of the melanoma diagnoses in New Zealand. The population of the southern DHB is just over 7% in terms of the national population. So it's about, batting 1,000 there. We're just as much at risk as anyone else in New Zealand.
Do you think attitudes are changing towards sun exposure?
Slowly. I think we have a program called SunSmart, which is delivered into early childhood education, primary schools, and that's been going on for a long, long time now. And that is starting to change attitudes towards it. You're also seeing in the workplace, and you may note when you're driving through to Central that a lot of workmen are wearing overalls now in the middle of the day, and that's just to cover up from the sun. They'll have on a wide brim hard hat rather than a cap. So even in the workplace, particularly those people who work outside a lot, that message is slowly getting through.
Certainly, I've noticed that the sun is a lot hotter now than it was, say, 10 years ago. Just the feeling of it on your skin. Yeah, it's quite remarkable.
That's the infrared rays. And the UV, you can't feel the UV, you can't see it. And so people think when it's not hot that it's okay. Well, actually, they're just at risk when it's, a southwesterly's blowing in the middle of January and it's maybe only 13 degrees. The UV index level might be quite high, so you're still very much at risk.
What are some of the misconceptions about sun damage?
I think the challenge when we're young, and we've all been, I certainly was a long time ago when I was young, but when you're 15 through to 25 and you're out in the sun a lot and you want to be brown, you want to be cool and all that sort of thing, the misconception is that if you get sunburnt, then you just get sunburnt, then it's okay, but the skin never forgets.
No.
So melanoma might not manifest itself for 20, 25, 30 years post that 15 to 25 year age group. So the more that you get sunburned and that you expose yourself to a lot of the UV rays over the course of your lifetime, the more at risk you're going to be later in life, as the skin doesn't forget.
Otago-Southland Cancer Society Chief Executive Mike Kernaghan, thanks very much for your time. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too.